On this episode of Locked On Canadiens, how is Montreal going to survive without Mike Matheson?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to episode 1164 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing on YouTube. And wherever you subscribe to podcasts, doing that supports the show and ensures you don't miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Ian Boisvert, also known as that. Maybe it's Ian, and I'm joined by the incomparable Laura Saba, also known as the actor Stick. Laura, it's kind of hard to realize it, but we're kind of 2 weeks into the NHL season. How are we feeling?
It feels like this Canadiens team is still trying to get into its stride or trying to figure out its stride. It does feel like it just started yesterday, but I think that we have enough of a sample size to know what trends are. I don't think we can draw full conclusions about the season from these games, but I think that, we can pick out some trends and look for areas of improvement or areas where they're doing well.
Yeah, I agree. We can't really make full sweeping judgments, but we can make judgments about individual games. And this was another stinker from the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday night. They fall to the LA Kings by a score of 4-1. So we're going to get into that. We have to take a look at what life is going to look like potentially without Mike Matheson in the lineup, as he left the game with an injury. And then we'll hit the mailbag with some of your questions, as well as a quick preview of the Islanders game on Saturday. But I think we have to start on Thursday. A very frustrating game. Montreal ended up coming close a few times, especially in the third period. But ultimately, it was too little too late, and they still just they could not put the puck in the net. A lot of bounces just didn't go their way. I think of the Kirby Doc move where he turned the defenseman inside out and put the puck right across the ice for Newhook, and it was slightly behind him. And I think the Kings player that was defending him lifted his stick. It was a really good play by the Kings. The Kings are a sneaky good team. Should we be concerned to this point about how sloppy they look offensively? We talked about it in I think earlier this week about passing.
Yeah.
And tonight it seemed like that reared its head. Like they just can't complete a pass.
Right.
When do we start to get concerned about that?
I think we start to get concerned if it's this time next month, mid-November. As you pointed out, there are a lot of players on this team that are playing together for the first time. Some are coming back from injury. Some are easing back into the game. Some are rookies, right? There's that as well. We have to acknowledge that. And so we need to give them some time for some chemistry to develop. But I do think that a lot of times, Martin St. Louis loves to talk about concepts, and I understand what he means by that. He likes to talk about reads, and I understand what he means by that. But I think it's time to do some fundamentals in practice. I think that's one of the biggest things, is that you're never too old or too much of a veteran to do fundamentals, and you're never too good of a player to practice that stuff. Like, I'm not saying bag skate them or anything like that. I'm just saying put some focus on some fundamentals. And I think that's part of it, is having them practice it, but also having them be conscious of it and having them develop better habits, I think is a big thing. Communication doesn't seem to be a problem between these players. They seem to be very vocal. Whenever you're looking at them on the ice, they are drawing things up. I think it's execution is more of the problem here. And with not just with passing, but also with just kind of, why are you aiming directly into the shin pads? I don't understand. Like, you are hockey players. Like, this is the one thing that you're told that you need to be good at, right? So there's a little bit of that as well. Samuel Montembeault unfortunately had to hold down the fort by himself. Kind of sucks for him that his numbers are going to be so skewed by this game, because I thought that he was actually quite good. And it was, if it was not for him, this game would have been out of hand and out of reach, as it were. Like the last minute of the game, they were still frantically and furiously playing with a man advantage. Like, they did obviously have that power play. I just feel like you said it was too little too late. I also just feel like they did not go the extra mile, so they kept falling short.
Yeah, and I think that 6-on-4 was a perfect encapsulation of that. I thought that they were way too casual. They did not look like they had any kind of killer instinct or level of urgency to what was happening in front of them. Oftentimes, if they were in a 6-on-5 in that situation, I think there would have been more buzzing. I think they would have been moving. For whatever reason, they get in these weird power play situations, whether it's a 6-on-4 or over the last few years, we've seen them in 4-on-3s in overtime, and they all just they're potted plants. They just stick their legs into the ground and no one moves, and they just push the puck around, try to find lanes, don't find anything. They lose the power play. This is the first game of the year where the power play goes 0 for, I believe it's 0 for 5 in Thursday's game. We did get Hudson on the top unit. It did not look good with him there, mostly because they haven't practiced with him there, and it was on an emergency basis. So I'm, willing to give that the benefit of the doubt for the time being. I think that'll be fine. But we'll get into that in our next segment. But
yeah, I also did think, real quick, sorry about Lane Hudson, is that what I liked about it is that he kind of defaulted to what makes sense, trying to get the puck to Slavkovsky, right? Like that's the person that he was expecting to score. But at the same time, like it just seemed like a passing, like they were just practicing passing at that point, which is ironic since they're not that great.
Yeah,
at
maybe
it.
they should.
Yeah, absolutely. But I did think that the decisions that he made in those moments were the ones that made sense. But unfortunately, I think it's also the decisions that made sense to the opponents, so they were able to be ready for that.
Yeah. I want to talk about face-offs. The Canadiens won 59% of the face-offs in this game. Somehow they did that with Christian Dvorak going 25% at the dot. Coming into tonight's game, he was operating at 44%, which is the worst in his career so far. Obviously a small sample size, but it's showing on the ice. In this game, he lost 2 defensive zone draws that the Kings ended up getting back to the point and firing a goal in. Against Boston, he lost shorthanded draws in his own zone, and the Bruins ended up scoring. It's not like overall power play or face-off numbers don't really mean much to me because you're always hovering around 50 some odd percent. It's when and where you lose them. And he loses a lot of them in the defensive zone and a lot of them on the penalty kill, which just puts this team behind the 8 ball before those opportunities even begin. I think a lot of this fan base is like very done with the Christian Dvorak experience, and I can't really say I disagree at this point. Like, what is he bringing? What is he bringing if he's not winning faceoffs? He's not providing much, if any, offense. His 2 wingers are the best players on that line, and they're playing in their 4th NHL game. I hate to dump on the guy, but it just he's had a terrible start to the season, no?
That meme that's like, it feels like kids these days don't really care about providing value to the shareholders.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking tonight when I was watching him on that last goal. I was like, what value is Christian Dvorak providing to the shareholders right now? The shareholders being me watching this game.
Yeah.
And so and that's exactly it. I think you're asking the right question is, what is he bringing? And so, whether or not the fan base wants him traded or not, I think we kind of all do, or sent to Laval or something like that. Like, I think that the approach to his game is incorrect. Whether it's coming from him or it's coming from the coaching staff, the approach is incorrect, because I think that he's kind of playing on a macro level and he needs to be playing better on a micro level. He needs to be doing those little things much better. And I think that will in turn help his 2 line mates that we're talking about, right? Like, 4 games in, and also like prevent them from falling behind in those situations. And, you can't just put Nick Suzuki out there every single time. It's not going to work. Right. And like you said, it's the worst of his career, and he's been around long enough that he should be better than this at the faceoffs. But it feels like it's not just the faceoffs. It's like the particular way that he's passing, or the person he's choosing to pass to, or what he's trying to do with the puck, and then he it gets taken off of him. Right. Yeah. So that to me is the biggest thing. Is so like I feel like Christian Dvorak needs to take a step back and ask himself, what value am I providing to the shareholders right now? And then approach things differently. Whether he needs to, maybe he just needs to practice faceoffs. He lost a lot of time last season.
Yeah, and they're reliant on him. The Canadiens don't have, Mike Johnson had pointed it out on the TSN broadcast. The Canadiens don't have left-handed centermen. They've tried Alex Newhook there. He doesn't win a ton of draws. Kirby Dach's right-handed. He doesn't win a ton of draws. It's really up to Jake Evans and Nick Suzuki. And you can't just always roll them out in the defensive zone because otherwise that first line is never going to get opportunities to score goals.
Right.
So it's definitely a situation they're going to have to figure out. I don't know how they solve that because I think everyone's looking for that kind of player. But I think a lot of it gets solved just by Christian Dvorak, maybe a couple pucks just bouncing his way. But we'll move on from that because we have to revisit our conversation from earlier this week about Mike Matheson to see how the Canadiens will manage in his absence. And we're going to get into all that in just a moment. But first, this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. It's so fun and simple to use, you'll really enjoy playing. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, we are back. But before we jump back in, I do want to thank you once again for making Locked On Canadiens your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast, which provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All right, late in the first period on Thursday, the Montreal Canadiens looked up and down their bench and no longer had Mike Matheson. They declared later on that he left the game with an upper body injury and would not return. It's apropos, given our conversation we had earlier this week about coming to the defense of Mike Matheson. And now we are talking about the defense without Mike Matheson.
So we are about to learn a lot about life without Mike Matheson. And I think a large part of it hinges on how they decide to replace him. We heard earlier today that Jaden Struble would probably be ready to go for the Islanders game. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's enough. I do sense a call-up coming. Whether or not he plays or not, I do think that Logan Wright is going to get a phone call sometime very soon. If not, it's not been announced already, but I sense it coming. But how they deploy the lines is going to be really important. But I think either way, what the Canadiens are losing with Mike Matheson being out is a lot of their transition and I'm not going to call it a forecheck because I don't think the Canadiens have a strong forecheck to speak of, but let's just say forward movement. I'd like to call it forward movement. Yeah. The third line has a great forecheck. I've really enjoyed them getting in on the rush and just dumping the puck in and going to work. The ice time was telling in the game against the Kings. On defense, in second in ice time was Caden Gooley with 23:09. Lane Hudson was first. Do you know how much Lane Hudson played? I would say close to 30 minutes, if not just past 30 minutes. 30 minutes and 5 seconds. He's 20 years old. Like, that's a problem. It's a problem, but it's also, like, to me, it's a solution, but it's also a problem. I think it speaks to just the conditioning the kid has. You know, they asked him at the beginning of the season, what's your favorite part about playing in the NHL? And he said, just the amount of games we play. Because in college, you play like twice a week. We've already played 4 games. That would be 2 weeks in college. Yeah. So, he's kind of a rink rat, it seems like. He loves to be on the ice. It doesn't look like his game suffers much when he plays that much. Like Lane Hudson at the beginning of the game looks very similar to the one at the end of the game. Even after he's thrown a hip check. Yeah. Even after it does help that he's 20. Yeah, exactly. But
again, it speaks to the fact that Montreal just might have lost one of their, probably their best defensemen in Mike Matheson, and they're leaning on a 20-year-old to fix it. It just speaks to the way that they think about this player, but it also kind of speaks to the fact that the Canadiens might be in some big trouble here.
Yeah.
I think that the power play will get more interesting with him on that top unit. I hope Jaden Struble does come back, but who else would need to step up in Mike Matheson's absence?
So this is not in any way a criticism of his game. I think it's more a we need that. And that's Caden Gooley,
For sure.
young player who can eat a lot of minutes, who should eat a lot of minutes. I think he can sort of take some of that load off of Lane Hudson, because I think part of it too is that you have to think about the way Lane Hudson plays. Like, there are going to be turnovers, right? There is going to be a need for someone more defensive minded on the ice for longer. And Jaden Struble, unfortunately, like, he is injured, because I think he's one of the most physically ready for the game players on this team, if that makes sense, like conditioning wise, like natural gifts wise too, right? Like, he's just so in shape. So like the fact that he's like coming back from being hurt, whatever it is, like the tweaking or whatever, like that gives me pause, because I do think that he's one of those guys that would be able to eat maybe less of the time, but more of the physical assignments. And that's going to be something. And I do think that this is going to be an opportunity. Again, we talked about, Logan Mailloux getting a call. I do think this is an opportunity for, whether or not they decide that it's him and they call them up, it's an opportunity for people to just kind of share the load with Lane Hudson, because if we're talking about Lane Hudson playing more than 30 minutes a night, like that to me is exhausting, just in the amount of like, confusion that we're going to have with all the fake outs and all the turnovers and the anger. Because you also, like, at this point now, you're going to assign him to quarterback the power play. So he needs some time off that ice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the one way the Canadiens could do that, this is the bad part of my brain, but the way they can do that is just by taking a bunch of penalties. He doesn't penalty kill. So that's how you can keep Lane Hudson off the ice. Look,
don't do that, Habs.
No, don't do that. That was a joke. I promise it was a joke. Just like it was a joke when I said just score one goal against LA, and they listened to me, unfortunately. I'm going to go with a guy that we've been talking about for weeks now, and that's Arbor Xhekaj. And the reason I say Arbor Xhekaj is he played the least amount on defense by a player that wasn't Mike Matheson. Mike Matheson played 7 minutes because he got hurt. With Jaden Struble coming back, Hudson was probably on the chopping block as far as not playing, going out of the lineup. This is now another chance for him to prove that he can be the defenseman that they want him to be.
Do you mean it was Arbor Xhekaj that was on the chopping block?
Correct.
Hudson. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, Hudson is not coming out of this lineup.
No. Yeah, no, Arbor Xhekaj. Sorry. Yes. Good clarification.
It's going to be kicking and screaming.
Yeah, no, I mean, he'll play 84 games if they want him to.
Yeah.
No, I just think that this Xhekaj was probably coming out when Struble was ready to come back. Xhekaj now gets an opportunity to stay in because they don't. I mean, the other option is an AHL call-up. I think we need to see more from him. He got beat. He keeps getting caught flat-footed on when he's defending the rush. There was one where Fiala just blew by him, and he had to grab him to take a penalty to avoid, a goal. I hate that I want to talk about this player so much, but I think it just speaks to the fact that, like, this market sees so much in this player, in Arbor Xhekaj, and he keeps getting opportunities to show that, and it just hasn't clicked. It hasn't clicked like it did when he first got here. That Arbor Xhekaj, while he probably wasn't as good as he is now, the expectation was a lot lower. So it was, hey, this guy's pretty good for, a guy who we got as an undrafted free agent who just came to training camp and won a spot. So that's who I'm looking at. Yeah.
I want to see that guy. I want to see the guy that, he was undrafted and then he made a name for himself, like on the AHL team, right?
Yeah.
He really like forced his name into the conversation. And so you go, sorry, I said the AHL team. I meant the OHL team. I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
But he forced their hand. And so same thing, like when he made the team, when he first in his rookie year, he forced their hand. I want to see that same guy. I want to see the guy being like, all right, I'm going to force your hand. You're not going to like take me out of this lineup. Like, and we have seen him provide value. We know he has an ability. We know he can be good defensively. He's not ever going to be that Norris winning defenseman, but he has that skill and he's able to play the body. And I feel like he's not doing either one.
Right. Yeah, no, so it's another opportunity for him and the rest of this defense to step up. They're going to have to if Mike Matheson is missing any significant time. We probably won't know much about that until Friday or Saturday morning at the earliest. So we will hold our breath there and hope it's not too serious, but the Canadiens are probably looking at least some time without him. All right, we're going to head into our last segment where we're going to hit our mailbag and set up Saturday's game against the Islanders, and we're going to get all that in just a moment. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Maybe you want to get in on the Chiefs and Niners Sunday, with the Niners coming in as 1.5 point favorites, or you think Devontae Adams makes a difference for the Jets on Sunday night at -134 in Pittsburgh. Either way, FanDuel is the place to play. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. This episode is also brought to you by Gametime. I love being in the middle of the action, whether that's taking in a concert or enjoying a night at the ballpark. It's just more fun being there. The place where you can go to get the events that you want to see is Gametime. We're big fans of Gametime here, thanks to their all-in pricing. It's a setting you can turn on in the app. So Gametime tells you exactly how much you'll be paying to get in, no hidden fees. Plus, with their seat views, you know what kind of action you'll be able to see. And with their lowest price guarantee, you know you're getting the best deal for your tickets. It's for all these reasons that I went to Gametime to secure tickets for the Habs game against the Islanders this weekend. I got some great seats at an even better price. I took the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, home stretch, Laura. Headed into the weekend, which means we're going to kick things off with some mailbag questions. I've got some quick ones here if we want to jump in. Kyle Roberts, our dear friend, the Roberts brothers, and it starts very funny. Hi, Ian, Laura, Jordan, and Nicholas. Confirmed, he does listen. There's another Roberts that is listening to this show. So
okay, so I want to know, is this the whole family? Are there other brothers and sisters that are listening or may not be listening? Can we bully them too?
They are a not insignificant percentage of our listener base. It's very funny to me that like the Roberts clan just shows up here in numbers.
It's the Locked On Canadiens extended universe.
Yeah, I love it. I used to be part of it. Now I'm here. Look what happens. Anything can happen. I've been seeing a bunch of buzz around Michael Hayes and heard he's tearing it up in Michigan. We are all on high alert with Demidov and his playtime. I was wondering if we can call in an expert and get an update on how all of our prospects are doing, especially since NHL has started. It feels like if the players aren't a first-round pick are on the Rocket, the Canadiens, they're not talked about. Yeah, we can probably find somebody, right? You guys, you have connections. Yeah.
We can find lots of somebodies.
Yeah, I mostly wanted to bring this up just to point out the run that Michael Hayes has been on to start the season. It's awesome to see, considering how last year went for him on and off the ice. Seeing him come back with this amount of passion, like you watch the highlights of him scoring, and yes, he's making some really nice moves, but man, he looks really pumped up to be scoring in the NCAA. So really, really excited about that player.
Absolutely. And so we'll bring someone on soon.
Cool. Robert Rice. We could talk about things like defense, goaltending, secondary scoring, and much more to determine how likely the Habs are to win on a given day, but that's hardly the most important factor. So down to what really brings the W's for the Habs, what is your system for wearing Habs apparel on game days? The lucky jersey or hat to be broken out when they really need to win? Or do you always rotate gear based on a goalie-like win in your in system? Remember, there are no wrong answers unless your team loses because you couldn't find your Sheldon Surrey socks. I used to be very superstitious about the things I would wear. I have a hat that both my wife and I have called Lucky Hat for a long time. It, obviously has not been very lucky in some time. But yeah, all sorts of things. I usually, even if I'm at home, like a dork, I put on a jersey. Just it makes it a little bit more fun for me. I don't know. What about you? Do you have any superstitions, or are you just a little stitious?
I'm a little stitious. I don't have apparel that I necessarily relate with Habs playing, but I have noticed in the last, let's say the last 40 or 50 games the Canadians have played, that if I miss the first puck drop, then the Canadians are more likely to win. So I do kind of putter in the kitchen before I turn on the game a lot of the time. And if I catch the anthems, then I know I probably doom the
You
Habs.
messed up.
So
You
yeah,
done
I
goofed.
messed up. Yes, I done goofed.
Last one from our emails. SJ Randy asks, I think Gorton and Hughes know Ray Bork extremely well. Could they add him to the staff to help fix the defense?
I
I
mean,
think,
they could add anyone to help fix this defense. It needs a lot of help.
yeah, can Ray Bork still go? Like, can we put him out there? I think that might be a better option than some of the things we have on a nightly basis. Um,
Absolutely.
that would be neat, especially because it would probably really bother Bruins fans, which is ultimately the goal here, right? Is to make others angry.
Yeah, so we got Robidas,
Yeah, exactly.
let's just
Uh,
collect them all.
yeah, you've got our next couple questions here.
Yes, I do. We've got some questions that came in on our YouTube channel. So one of them comes from user Molitars for the mailbag. Seeing as Doc is likely going to need half a season plus to get to form, what happens when Liney comes back? Reset the progress of the second line? Question mark. Liney will have been out for almost a season and a half and will likely go through the same readjustment. Knowing what Doc is going through now, what can we expect from Patty when he gets back into the lineup? I don't think that it's going to take half a season plus for Kirby Doc to get back.
Yeah.
I know that a large focus of yesterday's episode was, what's wrong with him? Is he okay? I think it's going to be more like, about a month and a half,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think so too. We're seeing flashes from Kirby Doc. The move he made to turn the defenseman inside out against the Kings on Thursday to set up Newhook, who just missed. We're seeing flashes of it. He's again on ramp. He's on the on ramp. It's going to take some time.
Yeah. And so I do expect the curve for Patrick Laine to be a bit shorter.
Mhm.
Just because he had worked so hard to get back into shape. So, him having an injury, I feel like it's the way that he's approached his recovery is just, to me, it makes me feel like it's just going to take less time, also because his line mates will be more ready, right? Like Newhook
Yeah.
is in peak form right now, knocking on wood. Oh my god, I'm gonna
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx the Habs injury. And then Kirby Doc should get it back. Like, he has that ability. Um it needs a little bit more time.
Yeah.
And then the next question comes from our good friend Kay. For the mailbag, I've actually been wondering what it is about Nick Suzuki that's led him, knock on wood again, be healthy, even with the injury plague that's been going around for the last few seasons. What are your theories? Is he just made of magic, or is it his playing style? Something else, just luck? And then Kay adds, for any hockey gods reading this is not a complaint or a challenge.
Yeah.
Um,
My answer to this is quick. He hasn't been completely healthy that whole time. We've seen it in his game. He's battled through things just to play games. We know this about him. He's that kind of Iron Man type NHLer. I don't think he's been 100% healthy, and his play at times has made it seem like he's not 100% healthy. So there's injured and there's hurt. He's been hurt but not injured. I think that's the best way to put it.
yeah. So do we want to do trivia? Do you have a trivia ready?
I do have a trivia ready.
Okay, let me give the answer for yesterday's
Yeah.
first. So I asked this question yesterday on the show. It was an easy question, but I was hoping to trick people out. So my question was, who was the Montreal Canadiens captain when the last time they played in the Montreal Forum? And I was expecting a lot of people to tell me Vincent Damphousse. I did get a couple of Carbonos, but the answer is Pierre Turgeon.
There you go. Nice one. I'll jump back into my remembering guys phase. Here's a Canadian and Islander. Montreal, New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, Edmonton, New Jersey Devils. Montreal, New York Islanders, New Jersey Devils, Edmonton, New Jersey Devils. If anybody gets this, I will be stunned. That's this kind of question. Before we move on, I did say we were going to set up the Islander game. We're going to put about as much effort into that as the Canadiens did on Thursday night. Islanders are 1-1-1. They're currently playing St. Louis as we record this. Leading scorers are Anthony Duclair, who's a brand new Islander, and Brock Nelson, who always seems to score against Montreal Canadiens. Laura, I'm going to be at that game, so let's just make quick predictions. What do you think happens in that one?
I think the Canadiens win, but it's like a 2-1 win. It's not, it's not something where it's a high scoring affair or a whole lot of excitement. Sorry, Ian.
Yeah. Look, I haven't seen the Canadiens win a game in like 6 years. So
maybe you're the problem.
Yeah, maybe. For a while I wasn't. I went to like my first 5 games they won. And I was good. And then I was very not good.
So it's the Canadiens that are the problem, clearly.
Yeah, for sure. I think, but maybe they win 5-4 in overtime. I'll say that. I'm going to say I'm going to have fun on Saturday night. But we had a bunch of fun on this one, but it is time to step aside. That's going to do us for this episode on Locked On Canadiens. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, head on over to Locked On NHL to see what else is going on around the league. As a reminder, we are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube, so be sure to subscribe to Locked On Canadiens so you don't miss an episode. You can follow the show on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. You can follow us on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens or email us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can find Laura at The Actor Stick. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian, and we will see you next week.